pass over to the amazing guests that we have today, I just wanted to say a couple of quick words. We're really delighted. I'm Jess. I'm from Cymru Women's Sport. By all means, I'm just one part of the team that's behind Cymru Women's Sport, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But we're really delighted to bring everybody together, and firstly, from us, just thank you for showing up. There's always a bit of anticipation when you organise events like this that nobody's going to come and nobody's going to care, but actually just to see so many people in the room is brilliant. For us, it's really exciting to co-host the event with the Women's Sport Collective, who are definitely making this incredible movement of bringing women in leadership roles, women to network together, and so it's really exciting to have it happen in Wales. Before I say a bit more about Cymru Women's Sport, I'm just going to ask Kate to talk quickly about the collective.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's absolutely delightful to be here and to see so many in the room. I'm Kate Hannon, as Jess said, and we're in two hats today, which is brilliant. So I'm the co-founder of the Women's Sport Collective, and I think we've got lots of members in the room. Can you show of hands if you remember the Women's Sport Collective? Brilliant.
The rest of you will be by the end.
Yeah, nobody's leaving without membership form being completed. And my second hat is that I'm delighted to say that I've just been appointed to the board of Cymru Women's Sport. So I'm absolutely delighted that those two passions have come together. For those of you that don't know about the Women's Sport Collective, we're a network community of women that work in sport, and bringing them together. And we do that with online and in-person networking meetings. We do some live webinars. We get offers, discounts for industry events. We've got some mentor programs coming on. It's free to join, so please do join. We've been going 3.5 years. We're up to 7,000 members, and that's across all areas of sport. So we've got Sally Mundy, who's head of UK Sport at the top. We've got an amazing woman who's a dog handler and does security at sporting events, and everybody in between. So if you've got a role in sport, please do join us. We have grown massively since we're up to 7,000 members, and we've just recently launched regional hubs. We've got up to 10 of those, and I'm delighted to say that this is the first meeting of the Welsh hub in conjunction with Cymru Women's Sport. And we've got a WhatsApp chat, so if you're not involved in that, I can send you a link, so please get involved with that. There's lots of offers and asks and opportunities being shared with that, and it's brilliant to see all of that interaction taking place. So welcome, enjoy the afternoon. I won't ramble for too much longer because it's not me that you want to come and talk listen to. I'll just hand back to Jess. Enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you, Kate. I don't think it's me that people want to listen to. I ramble. But I just wanted to tell you a little bit about Cymru Women's Sport, kind of the history, and a very whistle-stop tour of history, because it is quite a long one. And then talk about kind of where we hope to go and the kind of ambition to move this forward. So I suppose to sum it up, Cymru Women's Sport was sort of born after years and years of conversation with people that were kind of working in sport and on the fringes of kind of women's sport. And I think it's probably fair to say that the conversation was on balance equal amounts of passion to drive women's sport change and to continue and to accelerate this amazing rise that we're seeing in the kind of women's sport movement, with an equal amount of frustration around the pace and scale of change not being quick enough, not being deep enough, and not being systemic enough. And so after a couple of attempts of amazing campaigns that we've seen here, individuals that were kind of breaking stories around the challenges and the opportunities for women in sport in Wales, lots of opportunities to network, a couple of groups that were formed, the conversation quickly moved into this space where we identified that actually to make a real change, we probably need an entity that is going to move this forward. And in part, and I'm sure I'm speaking to people in the room that would feel this, we also identified that actually an independent voice that wasn't attached to somebody's day job or their day-to-day activities or how they volunteered or what they were doing on a daily basis, but could actually collect that kind of almost collective change that we want to see under a certain brand was also needed. So Cymru Women's Sport really was born from groups of people kind of getting together and having those conversations over a number of years, and we're absolutely indebted to where we are now, to those precursor conversations, and there's an absolute load of amazing people that were part of that. At the start of last year, so to bring you forward a couple of years, myself, Emma Henwood, who's sitting at the back, and Lee Robinson, who I suppose were the sort of 3 founding trustees of this new organisation, decided that we need to try and take hold of this and make some kind of structure out of it. So that is kind of where we are now, and actually today is for us a bit of a soft launch into what Cymru Women's Sport could be in the future. We've very, very recently, as Kate alluded to, been joined by 3 additional trustees. So welcome to Kate, to Beth Fisher, who's sitting in the middle, and also to Sarah Boswell, who's at the back as well. So really exciting time for us as we kind of almost build really from here and make sure that the organisation that we create is really, really representative of the Wales that we live in. And for us, that's an absolute focus in the really, really immediate future, is making sure that actually all of women's voices across all roles at different levels, whether that's in governance, coaching, media, if you work for a national organisation, if you're interested in women's sport research, that actually that is represented in the most diverse form through this organisation. So we do have 3 strategic pillars. I'm actually really glad I'm standing right next to the back. I get these words wrong all the time. And actually this is a true thing that I got a word wrong and Emma corrected me last week. So our first strategic pillar is about connection, and that really is what today is all about, and absolutely delighted to be able to do that in collaboration with a collective who do this so well on an international scale. So we really identified that there was no mechanism for people who are interested in women's sport to come together in Wales, and hopefully today is the start of many networking events in all different forms, whether it's opportunities like this to hear from people in conversation, whether that's online, at sporting events, you name it, we're interested in trying to kind of make it happen. So hopefully at the end of this afternoon you do have an opportunity to talk to each other as well, because for us that is hugely important. Our second area is about celebration. We also kind of recognised that there was no almost bespoke organisation or voice that was celebrating and championing women's sport in Wales on the kind of world and national scale. Again, we have some absolutely amazing female athletes. We have people who are in governance jobs internationally that are really changing systemic structures. We have amazing female leaders in Wales, and really for us this is about championing and celebrating their success, but also celebrating all of the stuff that's going on and the opportunities that are there for women in sport. And then the last area is about advocacy, and this is kind of where the change happens really. So we are really keen to advocate for the change that I'm sure, and I'm sure the reason that you're here today is because you'll probably share the sentiment, the change that we know needs to happen at all levels and all roles for women's sport in Wales. And that is at a governance level, that is women represented in sport media, that is the challenges that women face, the opportunities that are here in Wales, that is with fundamentally investment, but part of Cymru Women's Sport and that third strategic pillar is to really advocate for that change. So that is us in a nutshell. We are small but hugely ambitious, like a lot of things in Wales, and absolutely brilliant to have so many people that have come to join us today. So thank you very, very much. Hopefully we'll have a really fruitful and interesting conversation, which I know we will. Really, really delighted and massively grateful to Sue Anstiss and also to Tanni Grey-Thompson for joining us today to help us kind of move through the next couple of hours. So thank you. Oh, the last thing to say, which is a bit of a shameless plug, but everybody knows I'm going to say this, is that we are on all social media platforms. So that's the line, isn't it? One of the ways that we hope to grow is through visibility and profile, and I think actually you sharing that with your networks is going to be fundamental. So we have got a QR code, but you can find us at Cymru Women's Sport across all of those channels. So please share, please tell everybody that you know, and yeah, enjoy the conversation between Sue and Tanni.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like I don't need to introduce. I do feel like I know a lot of people in the room, but I am the co-founder of the Women's Sport Collective with Kay. That's the hat that I'm wearing today as well. But similarly, wear different hats, but that's where I am. I think, yeah, I know many of you, if not in person, today has been fantastic to meet some in person, but through the glory of LinkedIn and Zoom meetings and such like. So super happy to be here with Tanni. I've been together twice this week, haven't we? We don't see each other at all, and then
loads of time together.
Loads of time together. So lovely to see you. And I think what I want to do today is talk a little bit about your career, but really to get your thoughts on where we are with women's sport across the whole of that landscape, really. But I'm going to start, if I can do, with your sporting journey. And I'm sure in a room like this, there aren't many people here that don't know of your amazing accolades. But I wonder if you can share with us a short, little sort of scripted bio of where you are, your sporting achievements would be good to hear about.
Okay, so I grew up actually not very far from here in Cardiff, sport my family. Mum watched a lot of sport, Dad played a lot of sport. My mother was completely obsessed with rugby, and Gareth Edge is the greatest thing to walk in. As long as we all know that, we're fine. Yeah, I was born with spina bifida, could walk a little bit when I was young, got paralysed when I was 7. My parents had to fight to get me a wheelchair because all these people said, you know, if she's a wheelchair user, she'll have a normal life. My parents also had to fight to get me into mainstream school because back, you know, when I was 10, disabled children had no right to be educated in mainstream education. And that was really important for me because I was playing sport by then, but without mainstream ed, I wouldn't have gone to university and I wouldn't have had the career that I did. I played loads of sport, was completely rubbish at everything, very enthusiastic, and because I got into a fight playing basketball with a boy on the opposing team, I hit him. It was really annoying. My PE teacher said go and do wheelchair racing because you can't get close enough to anyone to hit them, and that was it for me. So I tried, because until then I was like, I don't want to do that, it's really boring. But from the minute I did it, loved it. And then I joined, actually at the time, Cardiff Athletics Club wouldn't accept me because I was a wheelchair user, so I joined Regent Athletics Club. I went to Loughborough, which was fascinating, interesting. I went there because Seb had gone there, Sebco. Met a lot of misogynistic coaches who toughened me up and made me the athlete I became. I think Loughborough's view is maybe a slightly different view of how they made me the athlete I became, but it really toughened me out and helped me deal with well. So anyway, 5 Paralympic Games later, I retired. And actually did a politics degree at Loughborough. Always said I would never work in politics because it's for losers. And my head of department remembered that when I ended up in politics. I was probably always going to end up somewhere in politics or law or I did something like that. And now I sit in the House of Lords, which is bizarre, strange, weird, amazing and everything in between. But still, you know, sport's such a massive part of my life. And because I had loads of opportunities as a young athlete and loads of support. So I sat on the board of Sports Council of Wales when I was in my very early 20s. Anne Ellis turned up at my door and went, right, you're on the board of Sports Council of Wales. Okay. You know, I was youngest by about 30 years. So loads of people have helped and supported me. And I was just saying before, you know, I remember a time when, you know, women who worked in sport or sat on a sports board, I mean, there weren't many of us. You know, and it is changing, it's getting better, but it was only, 12 years ago, one governing body came to see me and said, we're going to put a woman on the board. Really, well done. And I was like, oh my God. And he kept saying it. And then, so at the point, I mean, sorry, this is not the question you asked me, but, you know, we'd a load of women rung each other and have they been in touch with you? And I knew I was quite a long way down the list. And then when this guy said to me, but they can only talk about women's issues, I'm like, really? And he said this about 6 times. So I kind of went, what, menstruation? And then I should have left it there, but I didn't. I went really graphic, and he sort of went green. And then went, I don't think you're suitable. No, I'm not. But that's a really massive UK governing body. So it's useful, I think, to be reminded of those things because, yeah, stuff's improved and, you know, funding and sponsorship has got better and better, but we're still not equal. So I think it's always useful to remember where you've come from, to remember where we still have to get to.
And it's interesting, if you want to hear all of Tanni's stories, Tanni was my first guest on the Game Changers podcast way back. Why don't you make that feels like a long time ago. Now, 2019. But in terms of that sporting piece, I do want to talk about the change that we've seen. But as you look back now and reflect on just like Paralympic Games, are there momentous moments? Is there anything in your mind that really sticks out as that key memory?
Barcelona was huge because of Helen Mollison. So, this is a woman who had come from Newsround, had got a job presenting Grandstand in '89, front page news. How dare the BBC allow a woman to present Grandstand? The world was going to end because she was presenting Grandstand. And all sorts of things, what does she know about sports? And so she came to cover the Paralympics, and she was just like, we're doing this as sport, nothing else. And she set a really high bar. So she did Barcelona, Atlanta, and then very sadly she passed away in '99. And then all her mates at the BBC, Claire Baldwin, all the others basically said, we're going to carry on doing this in the right way, which was amazing. And the coverage of Paralympic sport, bizarrely in Paralympic sport, men and women are much more equal in terms of, actually probably there's probably more coverage of women Paralympians than men. Probably female Paralympians get more sponsorship than some of the men, so it's a bit of an odd sort of equality because that's not happening in mainstream still. But some of that's changed. So some of the positive change has been amazing, but there's also some slightly uncomfortable changes, I think, in the way Paralympic sport's covered. So there's something called inspiration porn, which you can very safely Google. I've done it on it's terrifying. Which is sort of the slight patronising way that disability sport's now covered. So unless you've got an amazing backstory, or you're a Paralympian trying to be an Olympian, then you're not quite. So there's some things that I think we've got to be really mindful of. And the reality is, say, Olympic sports, some people have an amazing backstory and some don't. And it's okay just to be good at sport without having to have a backstory as well. So, I think we just have to be a bit mindful of some of those things, that we don't accept whatever coverage we get just because it's coverage. And so I think there's a lot to learn from the women's sport movement. I remember a time when, I remember really early, I was called elfin-faced in an interview. Like, what's that got to do with it? They don't go ex-footballer looks a bit like a potato, but I'm a man. So, it's that. So some of this, what's brilliant today is, some of it, I think what we need to do is kind of remember our past, because it's not that long ago that, when you talk about women only allowed to run the marathon in '84, women were only allowed to do the pole vault at the Olympics in 2000, because apparently it would stop us having children. That was, it was like, ski jump, it's not boxing, it's not safe for women to box, all this stuff. It's not that long ago.
And in terms of that participation, because obviously you're so passionate about equality and gender equality too, but in terms of girls and the grassroots participation, so what do you feel at the moment are the biggest challenges faced, and also then in keeping teenage girls in sport too?
Well, some of those things haven't changed. There's some of the barriers. In a lot of schools, we still value sporty boys more than sporty girls. And yeah, there's amazing success at Olympic, Paralympic level and other major games. But I think, and it's amazing that there are so many more sports offered. When I was in school, just there were definitely more sports offered to boys than to girls. So I think there's more understanding of, well, not every boy wants to play competitive sport, but different ways to engage young women. And I think we just got to keep being smart and help the governing bodies to bring them in. So whether it's talking about lifelong fitness and health and other things, we've just got to keep finding better ways to engage. And also, I think there's more understanding now that men and women drop in and out of sport and physical activity. Just because you've played a lot when you're young, it doesn't necessarily mean you carry on through. But the reality is there's still a huge number of women who aren't fit enough to be healthy, and that does worry me. And also, I think we also just have to be really careful that we don't just look at, so I chair Sport Wales. We don't look at, it's great, the UK sport. You've got Sally and you've got Catherine. That we don't assume that everything underneath that is okay, because there's lots of areas where there still are, not necessarily as many opportunities.
And in terms of where, obviously we're sitting here to celebrate coming women's sport today, but in terms of Wales and where that is, I'm talking primarily in the grassroots area here. So is that any different from girls growing up in Wales, do you feel, than from the rest of the UK, or are the challenges the same?
A lot of challenges are the same. I think what we're seeing across the whole of the UK is cost of living. There's a massive impact, on families. There's actually, there's issues with transport. If you live various parts of Wales, it always makes me laugh because I spend most of my working life in London, where the advice in London is to be fit and healthy. You get off the bus stop earlier. Where I live, or some parts of the valleys, a bus stop's 3 miles up the road. So there's stuff like that. So I think certainly what I've seen in my lifetime, depending on how the men's Welsh rugby team play, impacts what opportunity or what coverage there is for women's sport. So the early part of my career, Wales were playing really badly at rugby, which helped me a lot because I got more coverage than if Wales had been playing well. What is amazing, now with professionalisation of the women's game, we're still behind England in some of the contracts and things like that, but it's getting better. But there's lots of challenges all over, and I think it's very easy to become, there's a lot of different challenges, and you can't just say, all women have the same challenges, but we've just got to be aware. And the reality, us at Sport Wales, is our funding's changing. That's impacting governing bodies' funding. That impacts what they're able to deliver and change. So we've got to think about how we do things in a different way to bring people in.
And then that elite end of sport, one of the different phrases. I talk a lot about the on-sport rights of women's sport, but that extra funding and visibility and crowds and the growth that we've seen. So there's much to celebrate and be joyful about. I guess what kind of worries you? What brings you joy that you've seen in terms, and especially in terms of women's sport in Wales and Welsh women's sport, and then what do we still need to be wary of, do you think, in terms of that equality message around women at the very top of sport?
I mean, I've lost count over the years how many interviews I've done where they've dug up some misogynistic old man who's like, they don't play the same, and nobody wants to watch it, and because I think they're frightened. They're frightened of women's sport, because they think they're going to lose something if suddenly people start watching women's sport. Well, actually, I think there's a lot to gain, and the professional teams who've been best at it recognise it's another market. So I did a news night just before COVID, where it was about women's football, and I remember getting the phone call saying, we can't find somewhere to say women's sport's rubbish. And it's like, yeah, great. I mean, they're still there, but they just wouldn't talk about it on Newsnight. So I assumed the item was going to be dropped, and they're like, no, we're still going to cover it. So there's less and less of those people around. So the amazing thing is, you look at women's football, women's rugby, it's incredible. What I worry is too strong a word, but as we get more professional contracts in women's football, I do worry, and if we still don't keep attracting more young women to play sport and go on to pathway, we're going to lose, certainly from Olympic programme, we're going to lose women who will go into football. Now, my daughter's 20, I kept pushing her really hard to play football, because when you're in your 20s, there'll be professional contracts, she doesn't want to play football. Sorry to anyone if in the same way in boys and men's football, if you think your son's going to earn 200 grand a week playing football, you're probably not that bothered about your GCSEs. If you think as a woman, and that there will still be tiny contracts compared to men's contracts, but if you think you can earn 100 grand a month playing football, you might go to football, not to other sports. So I do think we've got to keep an eye on that and I don't blame anyone wanting to do that. So that's why we need to keep pushing that pool. We need to grow the pool. But there's so much really exciting things about where women's sport is.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, I guess, Welsh sport and women's sport in Wales, so where does that sit in terms of equality, gender equality, both within the playing of the sport and within those boards and organisations? Do you look across, and obviously there's the international federations as well too, there's much we could talk about there, but where does Wales sit in the kind of ecosystem of sport?
Okay, I mean, we still, need more women on boards. So somebody said to me recently, when are you going to stop going on about women on boards? I was like, well, when all the men are brilliant. Because this has been live streamed. Yeah. There are some very average men who I know who've sat on sports boards, and I've lost count of the number of meetings I've been in over, I have to say not at Sport Wales, but meetings over the years where I talk about something which is in my area of expertise, completely ignore me, and then a man who has no experience in that space will say it, and they'll go, oh, he's good, isn't he? And actually some of the best allies I've had in that space have been where other men have sat on the board and said, she just said that. So that allyship, I think, is really important. But, you know, we need to encourage more women to put themselves forward, and Welsh Government's doing a lot of work in this space about helping and supporting, because certainly public appointments is a different process to a job interview and ask a different set of questions, and you know, it's actually just helping other women say, look, you know, if you apply to be on board of sport, like, you were going to be asked about the Nolan principles, right? You don't need to name them, never name them, because I always forget what if I start naming them. But we had something I was on the panel for recently where some poor man got into a complete mess with Nolan and started talking about which his favourite principles were. It's like, it's not a choice. You can't be a bit less, you know, keen on integrity. You know. So I think we've got a duty to kind of help people. It doesn't need to be this secret. You know, and the old boys network is still there, and that's, you know, the WhatsApp group saying, it's amazing, because, you know, you just kind of sharing and helping, and the best leaders that I've seen are the ones who aren't afraid to have really good people around them, because they're better. So yeah, there's more we need to do, and it's not, but you know, in Wales, the Welsh language is important as well. So I'm not fluent Welsh. I try. My mum was fluent Welsh. You know, that's something else that, you know, we need to. We have to be mindful of in recruitment and things that we do. So, you know, it's saying to people, you know, when you're asked about Welsh speaking, you need to say you have a commitment to learn Welsh. You don't need to be able to say loads, because I panic when I speak Welsh. But
was it Bryn hand down? What did I learn?
Can I come and say it?
I've been coached on my way up.
It was either that or
Tidy. So, you know, it's stuff. So it's some of the stuff in the past. I think it's been a real close shop, where I've definitely been around things, sort of in my 20s and 30s, where, you know, men would tell each other, you know, the secrets of the interview process and stuff like that. It's just being open about it to give people a shot, and, you know, just want really good people. And I think, yeah, I'm lucky. I've had amazing men and women around me who challenge me to be the best I can be. And yeah, there's always more to do, isn't there?
And there's what we can do as an entity, and as the ecosystem of encouraging more women. So just in closing, so I'd like to open the floor to take some questions from people too. We could preempt in case you're thinking to ask some questions. But in terms of, if, you know, women that now that are either on the live stream, that are here in the room, that want those leadership roles in the future, what advice would you give to women within sport now?
So this is not just a plug for your WhatsApp group, but it is a plug for that. But connect, you know, and it's, do you know what, I hate going to any kind of, like, you know, cocktail reception or some, I've already poured my head in a vat of vinegar. You know, because I go and I think I'm never going to know anyone, and I'm never going to know who to talk to, and then actually you always find someone to talk to. But those connections really matter, and having that, you know, whether it's a critical friend or just a voice or somebody to sense check to. So, you know, I've got a group of women around me where if I do something, was I just being slightly mad, or was I just being rude, or just was I said, you know, because sometimes it's all the microaggression stuff, and especially I'm going through menopause. I'm telling everyone I'm going through menopause because it's just, my ability to be patient has gone. And then I think it's something hitting. I'm 54. It's something hitting 50 as well. Where I'm just not. So I do try to, you know, not lose it in meetings. And you see now with menopause, I have no idea why I started telling you that. I just go down a completely random route.
Supportive women.
Supportive women, oh yeah, thank you. So, you know, it's about finding people that you can have, you know, that sense check with. And, you know, I only think of the really witty, amusing thing to say in a meeting about 4 hours later. Where it wasn't that long ago, I sat in a meeting and the chair picked up my hands and started stroking my hands and said, I'll come and explain that to you later. And it was just like, and it's like, I can't say anything, because if I do, I will lose it. And because when I lose I cry, and I'm really snotty, and I didn't have any tissue, and I know it's really hard for me to dial back from that. Which is where menopause can be quite useful. But I remember just kind of just being pretty angry, and then just looking at every other board member around the table, just looking at me in the eye and going, and then coming out and just somebody saying, were you upset by that? You know, so you sometimes need that, and because actually the older you get, you just get better at dealing with the same stuff. And that's, you know, where I think we can help some of the younger women is, you know, is not pretending this misogyny doesn't exist, far less than it's ever been. But some of it's still out there. And there's also women who don't help other women, and there's men who don't help other men, you know. But for me, that connection is really important to think about, okay, how do I deal with this? But then the best stuff, you know, is, you know, you come out of, you know, meetings, you know, and, you know, I really enjoy working with other women because there's less politics, I find. That's probably a bit generalistic, but, you know, just get on with stuff. And that's kind of really exciting because you kind of just want to do things, not sit around and talk about it for 3 years.
I think we can finish in terms of where we are and just doing things too. So thank you. I'm going to invite Jess and Emma to come up, and then I think for the four of us to take some, or for the three of them, I'll take some questions, but to take questions from the floor. People had, you in charge of the camera, Kate?
I was just going to give Emma a chair.
We'd love to take some questions from people for the next 10, 15 minutes.
I've got a question.
Yes.
I mean, Baroness Tanni was born to say that when you were 14, I told you this before, but you opened our sports hall in school, and I was a very naughty girl in school, and your speech inspired me, inspired me to go on the journey to go and play hockey for Wales. So I just want to say thank you, because that was obviously only 10 years ago. But like, listen, I think we've spoken about diversity, and obviously we're in a room with all white people. No one people of colour applied for any board positions. Is a huge issue within Welsh sport. Out the big 14 sports, only Cecilia in rugby is of different heritage.
Yep.
How can we improve that? Because when I did an investigation for ITV, the answer I'd get back from NGBs, and it was constant, was nobody comes to us. And by the end of it, it was quite, extremely frustrating. So how do you as the chair of Sport Wales ensure that we're not just a room of white people going forward?
For me, we've got to go out and just find them, you know, and the same thing that happened with me when Alice. So I don't really know the process that they decided that they wanted someone young on the board and they wanted someone who was disabled. And I'd just come back from Barcelona, so I was in the kind of the Welsh media. You know, we just need to go out and, you know, you meet them in events, you know, give them your number, you know, connect, because, you know, still the reality is women don't apply for things unless they think they're 99% qualified, where we've just done some recent appointments at Sport Wales. I won't say what background of the man who applied, but had no background whatsoever in sport, and actually said he wasn't particularly interested in sport, and then was applying for quite a serious job in Sport Wales, and you go, wow, okay. So we've got to go and find, and Anthony Hughes, who was a coach in Wales, who sadly passed away, he worked in Disability Sport Wales. He was really funny, but if he saw a disabled person out on the street, he would literally go and say, right, do you do sport? Right, do you want to do sport? He used to find a lot of people in Tesco's. He used to, you know, we call it big Tesco's, he used to follow young people and disabled children and their families around Tesco's, and there was definitely one family who basically went, we'll bring our child to a sports event if you just leave us alone. So maybe not do that, but we've got to go out and look, because, you know, there's the barriers of being a woman, and there's all the intersectional barriers as well. That we've got to measure as well.
But as a person who I was approached by Anne, and that's obviously, you know, Anne's hockey, so she's our queen in our eyes. But did you feel that it was kind of, how did you feel? Because that's often as well as like, you know, do we then go to someone who may be, you know, of a different heritage? Is that you know, condescending? How do you balance that between doing the right thing but also ensuring that they're not feeling that they're only on the board because they may be black or brown? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I've definitely been on the board of stuff because I'm disabled, and I've definitely been asked once whether I was a lesbian, and this is like 15 years ago, and it was sort of done in jokingly, like, are you not lesbian as well? because that will tick a box.
Two boxes.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's how you approach people.
Okay.
You know, I'm probably not approach random people in the street,
Yeah.
but you know, a lot of stuff we do. You know, whether it's we had a big conference last year. We're really conscious as people walk through the door. There's not that diversity. We've got to ask individuals. I mean, we know some of the reasons people don't put themselves forward, but they're quite complicated as well.
Yeah.
And I think certainly some of the appointments I've been involved in probably in the last 5 years, where in various bodies where I've approached really senior women and said, "Oh, would you like to apply for this?" Some of it's like, "Why would I do that? You know, like, why would I give up my career, outside sport, or why would I give my time to that?" Because sometimes the culture is not seen to be attractive.
Yeah.
And this is what we've got to try and change as well, that some of the culture, where the reality is, sport at its best is amazing, but it also at elite level can develop a set of behaviours which are not inclusive, not welcoming, bullying, intimidation, sexual harassment, still exists.
But even at senior level in some organisation that exists as well, isn't it? So it's ensuring that, you do have people that adhere to those behaviours.
But I think that also creates the problem as well, because my wife works in banking and her boss is female, very senior. And if she went somewhere else, to her, and we spoke about that would feel that all the battles she had to try and do it in that sector that she's in would almost be lost. So she's trying to empower people in her field to go through the finance sector. And it seems it's very hard to go from that, because they still feel that they're fighting the battle to go somewhere else. I think for us in terms of colour and everything else, is if we can get more diversity at a younger age. I know it's not the thing we want, but at time we'll get more variety as we go through. But it starts off driving back there, and you create that bigger base of the pyramid, and then we can drive more diversity as we go up. But it's just such an awkward, complex piece, because I know people, as I said, battling in their own fields. To give it up to them would feel like all the years they've battled to get where they are would almost be lost, even though we empower somewhere else. To them, it's something we want to let go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think for Cymru Women's Sport, as an organisation and as an entity, this absolutely cannot move forward without having this conversation and it being representative of the Wales that we live in. We're talking about advocacy, we're talking about changing deep systemic structures. There is no way this organisation can do that if you don't have people represented in all roles and all levels. So I mentioned this at the start, but fundamentally for us as we move forward in the next week, that is something that we're just conscious of and we have to change. And I think we're already committed to this is going nowhere unless actually it represents the Wales that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had we did a bit of a recruitment process before Christmas, and we had a lot of interest, didn't we? And actually, we've had some of those people join us in an advisory panel in the room today. But we could have filled the board. We could have filled it with people, all the same sorts of people. You're all wonderful people, but we recognise that it's important to be able to keep some of those roles back for people who are able to offer us a different perspective as well, and actually drive us forward in a slightly different way as well.
I mean, I'm sorry, I still go to a lot of stuff where I'm the only person with a visible impairment in the room, where there'll be 200 people in the room, and you go, oh, okay. So it's good that we now recognise invisible disability, but you can't see it. So there's so many things that are still a kind of challenge, but that's not. I'm a great fan of measuring stuff, because if you look at disability pay gap, a load of companies don't measure that because it's really bad. And so, but if you don't measure it, how do you know? And that's what we have to start doing.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to do a bit of a pitch. Hi, I'm Alison Thorne. I'm Wales Lead for Women on Board. And so one of my key passions is getting everybody onto a board as early as possible. I'm a big believer that the earlier you start, and sometimes what holds us back is, I'm doing a management role, I'm not an executive leader. Actually get that experience as a trustee or as a board member as early as possible in your career. It will benefit both your career, but will benefit all the things we're talking about. That's my pitch. The other thing I think is observations of having grown up in Wales, moved away with work and then come back is, we're inclined to be a bit siloed. And therefore I really, really support that connection piece. That's why I'm here today with Jess and the team, supporting them from Women on Board, but just all women together. It is about just, creating those opportunities. And I think, the challenge around getting more women and go to ethnicity, different mix of disabilities, we have to go where those people are. You know, we can't keep having them in these environments where people may not be comfortable. So we really have to go to where people are, be that on the playing field, etc. And the third point is, I know nothing about sport. I've been on Sport Wales, I'm on the Welsh Rugby Union, I'm not a sports person. You don't have to be an expert in the field that you want to go and make a change in. So that's it.
Thank you, Alison. Any other questions at all? Yes.
Hiya, you talked about the need for male allies, and I think we can all see that that's really required, but there's been quite a lot of stuff recently that we've heard around in the media about Gen Z males having a bit of a different view, or some of them towards feminism and what that does, coming out of all the, dare I say it, Andrew Tate and Joey Barton rhetoric. How do you see us, how do we deal with that going forward if we still need to make the change that we need to make when we're not even sure if actually our youngest generation that are coming through are going to be as on board as some of our current generations are?
That's a good question. I mean, I think social media is just, I mean, I love and hate social media in equal measure. I think some of it's a really dark place to be. You know, when Twitter was just pictures of cats, you know, it was quite lovely, and now I find some social media really difficult because it's not a place to have a sensible discussion about anything, and it brings out really extreme views and you know, obsession with I think kind of fame and you know, we're dealing with some really complicated times at the moment, in some ways much more complicated than, you know, when I was growing up. So I think, you know, building and helping young women develop resilience is even more important, and dealing with some of that, and you know, some of the things that come in, you know, say, you know, Andrew Tate, it's really worrying that young men feel a connection to that and aspire to kind of be that type of person. So it's how we, you know, try and refocus it. You know, our responsibility to educate young men as well as young women. I think we're going to have to think about that much more carefully than we've ever done, because it's not just about telling women that you can stand up and you can, you know, be tough and all these things, if we don't educate young men to think differently. So, I mean, if I was education minister, I'd kind of quite radically change a lot of things about education in schools. I'd definitely have PE every day on the curriculum, but I think there's just we've got to do more to show it's not the real world. And you know, I was reading some stuff this morning about, you know, because of social media, access to pornography. You know, a ridiculous number of now 12 and 13-year-olds, boys and girls, have access to hardcore porn, and how that changes relationships, and the amount of sexual abuse for young girls has gone through the roof. I mean, it's just quite terrifying. You know, how some of that is going to affect young people growing up. So I think as much as women's sport has done loads and has come so far, it's can be quite a scary place for young women as well. Should probably ask people who are younger than me. Just look at me. Yeah.
No, I completely agree, and I think, you know, bringing it back to Cymru women's sport, I think we've talked a lot about systemic level change, and you know, that's exactly what you've alluded to, Kira, I think. But women in all roles at all levels are kind of key in that as well. So, you know, governance structures not being representative, how are you going to be able to make decisions and have conversations that really impact on the ripple down effect of sport in kind of all of those roles? So yeah, I think, you know, for us that's obviously hugely topical as well, around how we kind of I suppose make touch points in different areas, from governance to media to participation to investment, and hopefully links with a lot of what kind of Tanni has said in terms of that education piece and change.
I think as well, I mean, it's been mentioned a couple of times, but male allies, we were really surprised. I think somebody did say to us, you know, about how we pitched this organisation. Any thoughts were very welcome, but you know, are men interested in helping women progress and change? We've got one man in the room today who definitely is, which is fabulous to see, but we perhaps need to work a little bit on our narrative. We need to talk to people about what we need from them, and we do need men to be on this journey, because we can't do it alone. We are slightly over half the population, but we've got to take men on the journey with us.
But I think there's quite a few people here from clubs or FAW and Ospreys. Like Ashton Hewitt got in touch with me, he said, can I help, because he saw my Instagram. and we talk about those opening networks. I think there's a load of us here that probably work with male allies that actually they probably don't think, God, it's not for us as well, isn't it? So just having that conversation, because there are definitely men that.
I think it's hard for men as well. I think it's hard for. I'm speaking on behalf of men here.
But I think
thousands of years. I think it's hard to know where you overstep and mark where you put. And I know we do a lot of work with Hugo Monnier, and he's been on the Women's Sport Trust. He's a trust in the Women's Sport Trust. But he and I have some really open, honest conversations where I'm learning from each other in terms of allyship in different areas. But about the whole, does he want to take on something where he's even commentating on women's games when actually he hasn't been doing it in the past? So is he taking the place of a woman that should be doing it? So I think there is that hard. But I think if we can put our arms around and welcome in, so I think men almost need a bit more of an invitation to come into this space, because it might be a bit intimidating, and it's almost like, should I be here? Am I taking that space for somebody else? I think it is probably on us to help ourselves.
Just on that, we've been running around as leagues just over a year. It's a brand new sport really in a lot of senses, so we're still finding our way, but it's predominantly women. So we've got about 12% male players at the moment, and I could honestly say that they're big female sport advocates, and what they generate from the women in the teams, and they inspire them, they support them, and so maybe there's some element, I don't know how that would work, but our experience with having males involved in a women's game, if you like. I don't know if that's actually a true statement, but we'll go with it. Yeah, it's been a really good experience. So maybe there's, I know there's been male netball occasionally and things like that. We never really hear about any of those things. So it's always because we're entering into a male-dominated sport. Yeah. Well, our experience is the opposite, and it's been a really good experience. Your husband plays. So we've got, Rounders is a family sport more. We've got mums playing against sons and with their daughters, and I've been in team sports since I can remember, and I've never been involved in something so diverse. So listening to you all now and where your backgrounds are predominantly female, are predominantly male. Rounders hasn't really been a sport yet, and we've got a big ambition to make sure it is. But actually, maybe that also needs to come in, get involved, and see how it can be flipped.
There's a bit. So where were you from in Wales?
Wales netball.
There was a piece that I heard as well around young men that actually we talk about things. We talk about this is the way that it is. This is the way society is, and obviously it is crap. You look at all the stats and things. But people then also feel they can jump on the bandwagon with the set because this is that's the norm. Actually, if we talk and celebrate the men that are supporting women's sport and that are our allies, and that's the norm. And if we have more professional male athletes at a very high level of their sport stepping forward and defending women, and that becomes the norm, but actually then, because I feel there's this extreme men over here, we're never going to change, and then there's the men over here who are strong men. It's this bit in between that we want to shift towards being more allies. So if we can celebrate and highlight, and that becomes the norm, of course, why would men not support what women are doing? It's good, commercially, for society, then that kind of feels like a positive thing too. So
I don't know if this is completely utterly made up, but it might be.
What's the best at?
Yeah, so that's the caveat. So what I heard about the Euros was that suddenly when England got into the final, loads of people were requesting tickets, loads of men were requesting tickets. And what I heard was that if they hadn't requested tickets for the first games, they were just told, no, you're not going to provide. Yeah, and that was kind of really interesting. It was like, you can't just jump in at the end and go, it's brilliant. If you weren't there at the start, then, that was quite a strong, line, I think, to take.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also think it has a really big long-term impact now, because I'm thinking of, traditionally when I was young watching sport, there'd just be me and my dad watching rugby and me and my dad watching football, and there was only one thing to watch was men playing. Now with the success of the Lionesses and other pieces, it was me sit down with my dad to watch ladies football, and that would have been, if I had a child, a little first, that would have been my son or daughter watching. So I think that's also going to kind of contribute now, where it becomes more normal to see. Hopefully that will kind of lessen, we should be doing that, or this person should be doing. It becomes a bit more ingrained into society then.
I've got okay, 2 more questions. Is that allowed? 2 more questions? One at the back.
Hi, so I'm Ria, former chief exec of Hockey Wales and former hockey player. Currently run a leadership and mental fitness business, so really excited to meet everybody and excited to be part of Cymru women's sport. Tanni, my questions around education, and I know how much of an advocate you've been for PE on the school curriculum. Massive captive audience, there's all these girls in front of us in the school environment. Recently, obviously, the change of school curriculum and PE coming off, even the word physical education is off, it's health and well-being. I did my masters on it, so a real concern for me. should we be concerned about the impact of that fundamental school change within Wales? And Sue's obviously asked a question about the difference between England and Wales, you know, private schools in England and more access. You know, do we foresee for 2 Commonwealth Games down the road that Wales might be underperforming compared to where they are now? And just to add to that, I'm a former PE teacher, my friends are teachers, they don't know who Leah Wilkinson is. She is Wales' most capped player, more than any other sport man or woman. You know, I hope you all know who she is. But you know, they don't talk about, those teachers don't talk about women and girls in the same way as maybe the male teachers do. How do we fix that? Like, and do we have a responsibility to do so?
All of that, Tanni.
My questions there.
No, so we got really close a few years ago to getting PE measured the same, or given it the same status as literacy and numeracy. So we've got all this data that shows actually how important it is being physically active to literacy and numeracy. And then there were some bad STEM results in Wales, and then it all went to, you know, we've got to fix the STEM results, instead of saying, well, actually PE can be, or physical activity can be part of that. So I do think it's a problem, because it's about having a healthy mind and body and spirit, and you know, having that balance in the school day. And I think what you see is, you know, if you look at a lot of women my age, so pretty much all the women I went to school with had 20-25 years where they didn't do any physical activity because their experience wasn't great. And I went to a really sporty school that was very encouraging, and then sort of come back in at different points. But then also the way they encourage their daughters to play, because of their personal experience, is kind of quite interesting. So no, I do think it's a problem that, and you know, how we have that conversation. So you know, there are things we could do with Sport Wales, and then there's also limits to what we can do as well, because you know, some of it is, you know, we can have an opinion, but it doesn't mean to say that, you know, necessarily Welsh Government has to listen to us. But it's not just the impact on, I think it's quite helpful to use elite sport as part of that conversation, because people get it. But actually the bigger impact on, for me as well, is that, you know, we're not going to have women who are being fit and healthy to work. You know, pension ages for women are only going one way. You know, and an impact on, you know, a changing society. So I think that's where we need to use the lens of elite sport to then, you know, widen it to other things. But we're seeing that problem in different ways all over the UK. You know, cricket as a sport is, you know, so, you know, the data on, you know, so many of the men's team come through independent schools. A number of them will have been given a scholarship for sixth form, but actually it's independent schools that have got the time and the space. When you've got all Wednesday afternoon for PE, and you might have a Saturday as well, then you've got time to play cricket, where if you've got a 35-minute PE lesson, you haven't got time to do those things. So I think it's like our responsibility. We're seeing, if I move this to Paralympic sport, you know, it's about educating the younger Paralympians about the history of our sport, because, you know, some of the ones in their 20s now don't know people a generation before me, or 2 generations before me in wheelchair racing, who made the change, because it's not on the internet, and there's no YouTube videos of it. So, you know, without Chris Hallam, who lived in Cymru, who, you know, won the London Marathon when I was 12, and I remember watching him going, oh, this is what I want to do. You know, I wouldn't have had my career. He knocked down so many of the barriers for me to then come behind him. So this is where we kind of need to, you know, not sit down and teach people history, but they need to kind of know the, and that's why I talk a lot about Anne Ellis, because Anne probably, you know, actually in Wales she will, but she's had a massive impact on sport in the UK, which she probably is, I don't think she's ever had the credit for what she's done for UK sport. And, you know, that's where we need to sort of, you know, get those names. But that's where the history of, you know, women not being in the media, you know, and not being covered, or, you know, depending how Wales are playing at rugby, you know, we've got to talk about those names. And that's probably where we can, through social media, is put those names out there.
I think, just to add to that, Tanni, so I think even though there's enormous challenges and the changes with the curriculum, like, there's also an opportunity there. And I think, you know, this idea of how do we create this whole school approach, which is about system level change. So it's not just about PE, it's about active lessons and, you know, how you get to and from school and all of those things. And all of those things need to be considered through women's lenses as well, because that's all different to what kind of boys and men need. And I think the last thing I'd say on that is just, you know, our friends at Women in Sport are absolutely the experts in this space. So the research that they do with, you know, school-age children, school-age girls around the needs of school and the needs of sport in school is just amazing. And I think it just reinforces the need for organisations like Women in Sport and Cymru Women in Sport to exist, to be that kind of expert voice. So there's loads that we can learn definitely by kind of sharing across the system as well.
It's also how we connect. I mean, if you think a street lighting, you know, access to a rugby club and a girl's got to walk through a dark car park to access the pitch, they're not going to do it. So I think our connection is beyond here. It's, you know, it's other Welsh Government bodies to say, transport, anything like that. Like, how are we making that change easier for people?
Yeah.
I'm conscious that it's nearly lunchtime. I'll take one more question if that's right. Lovely.
Hi, Cathy Owens. I used to run women's rugby for either Sport Wales or the WRU. Long time ago.
Very much appreciated.
But, you know, so that, and I think I agree with you, Tanni, as well about as you get a bit older, you give much less of a shit about things. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really pleased that, you know, women have taken this on and looking forward to working in the organisation. And I think it's, you know, very positive, everything we've heard today. And I just think we need to think about a little bit of sort of constructive impatience, you know, because there's quite a lot we could be doing to celebrate and advocate, and there's also a little bit we could do punch people in the face. So, you know, like follow the money, you know. We spend quite a lot of money, not as much as we'd like, but on supporting sport in Wales. And a lot of those sports, you know, have a third of women just not existing. You know, they're not on the boards, they're not in the participation, they're not coaching. Ethnic minorities too. I mean, you know, but we are, so at some point we have to sort of dial down the taps a bit and say, actually, unless you are going to join us on this journey, maybe we could give you a little bit less money next year.
Sorry, the Code of Sports Governance in terms of Sport England and UK Sport, what's the situation in Wales on that in terms of the funding of sports and the gender equality on boards? Is there a similar?
I mean, okay, I had probably pre-Sport Wales view and a Sport Wales. So I would have been definitely, if you're not doing this, just don't fund. And you know, funding does matter. Also, removing funding doesn't always help because you remove funding and it shuts everything down. But you know, there are times when you just have to say, okay, enough's enough. That, you know, we're not going to keep supporting you unless you know, you've got duty of care, unless you know, do things in a better way. So, you know, to Sport Wales, yeah, absolutely, in terms of our diversity is incredibly important, and you know, because it's the Welsh Government, so my appointment's Welsh Government, and then it's still Welsh Government for board, but we have an input into it. And you know, that's, you know, we're doing a round of recruitment at the end of this year, and you know, I've been spending the last 6 months thinking about how we get, you know, enough of people applying who we need to apply. So it's always a challenge, but that's why we need to keep looking for more people.
On that point, I'm sorry we've got to end, but do you think that because we're so small, Welsh Government, Sport Wales and the NGBs, that there's a lack of accountability in the you know, because I'm just asking genuinely, in a case of friends of friends of friends, do we need to be a little bit more hardened in our maybe approach to actually having those relationships? Because I found that you can go one place, one person, and is that affecting our ability to make people accountable? And someone said no, but I'd like to know. Well, who's it?
I think there's real accountability. So from Sport Wales, there's a capability framework every national governing body has to sign up to, part of which is about gender parity on the boards. So there's a framework to force those, and so on quality discussions when it was a bit, and this is only 4 or 5 years ago, when they go, well, 30%'s enough, isn't it? And I'm like, no, it's got to be gender parity. And so, you know, there's little battles along the way, and then, you know, Sport Wales do hold people and those national governing bodies to account. But I think we also have to recognise sport is changing so much, isn't it, in terms of, you know, there are new sports emerging. They don't want to be part of the big governance framework. So how do we keep people safe, and how do we ensure that that's really equal? You know, there's so much change going on. So I think there's some really good governance in place in some places, and there's probably nothing in others.
I'm not a regulator, or an, you know, So I think I did say in front of the culture committee, if you want to make me a regulator, and then, but yeah.
I'm gonna pause there because I'm conscious we can carry on all afternoon. Yes, did you want to finish?
Yeah, just, and Em, you're probably going to jump in as well, but just 3 very quick things from me, and they're all thank you. So firstly, to you, Sue, and to Tanni, we know you are incredibly busy, so thank you for giving up your Friday afternoon. Really great conversation, and you're right, we probably could carry on for hours, so hopefully you've got a bit of time to sort of chat and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Secondly, PwC, thank you so much for hosting us. Really brilliant venue, absolutely lovely view, just started to rain, so very Wales, brilliant. But yeah, look forward to working with you in the future as well. And then lastly, actually to Emma, who can absolutely organise anything you need. So, Alison, you cannot poach her for any other board. But the reason that we're able to live stream, the reason that we're in this building, how we've got Sue and Tanni here is totally down to Emma, and Lee, who can't be here today either. So just, yeah, massive thanks to you.